This is ITV. Certainly the best.
All right, thank you so much for joining us again on the program this morning on ITV, on independent television. A while ago, we watched the paper review segments, and we saw different headlines. There was one particularly that caught my interest. Said that Buhari is dead, current president and impostor, and that comes in from the Biafra National Guard. Well, let's just read. It says that the Biafra National Guard, BNG, has alleged that President Muhammad Buhari died long ago, adding that the current president is a product of plastic surgery. In a statement sent by Daily Post, BNG leader Innocent Orji maintains that the current national president is an impostor. Is an impostor now, and BNG also stated that it would do everything humanly possible to defend the people of Biafra. Well, the way we see some of these headlines at times, the way headlines come and all that, but I don't think this is proper, Mr. Fred Igwe.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, but that is not what we're going to discuss anyway, but I just want us to quickly look at that.
Yes. That statement coming from Biafra National Guard, to me, is very irresponsible because it is not substantiated, and it is damaging. But you cannot quantify the kind of damage that can do, but it is just irresponsible because it cannot be substantiated. And they didn't go to the extra mile or the mile even to try to substantiate it.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll just take that aside and leave it and see as
there's no credibility to it
at all.
It's not substantiated. Okay. And if that were so, there would have been an official release
just
on that.
Just the way I'm
official report on it.
Aside, yeah.
Then we also have to think of the fact that this is a man that went for medical tourism or medical treatment abroad in reputable hospitals. Yeah. So if that were to happen, they have an obligation to
anyway, let's leave that away. That's just one of those headlines
exactly.
On the papers.
So it's nothing to dwell on actually. Okay. Yes.
All right, the program is still TMI, and I did say that we're going to look at the issue of our economy today, Nigeria's economy, and the exit from recession. Yesterday we read in so many papers, perhaps so many headlines there, that the National Bureau of Statistics says that the nation's economy has snapped out of its first recession in 25 years as gross domestic product has returned to positive growth. And of course, it went on to say that the Bureau said that Nigeria's GDP grew by 0.5% a year on year in real terms in the second quarter of 2016. Now, I really don't know how to explain this. Perhaps Mr. Fred Igwe, who is an economic expert in economic issues now, will have better interpretation. Now, let me just start on this note. How would you look at the Nigerian economy now in the face of this exit from recession? Let's look at it the way it is today.
First, I would like to correct that impression that I'm an economic expert. Okay. I would not say I'm an economic expert, but I have enough knowledge about that.
Economic issues?
Yes, on economic issues because of my specialization in my profession. Okay, as a business and commerce graduate.
Yeah.
Okay. So first and foremost, let's talk about the recession.
Yeah.
Okay. For a nation to go into recession, it would have suffered negative GDP growth on 2 consecutive quarters. That's in 6 months. Every 3 months, when the calculation is done, or when the sum total GDP is calculated. Okay, it would have suffered negative GDP growth twice consecutively.
Yeah.
So, and that's where Nigeria was. It had not suffered negative GDP growth in 2 consecutive quarters only, but over some 4 consecutive quarters. Okay. And when, for the first time, you come out of that, when you now begin to have a positive growth, that means the recession had bottomed out, and now you are beginning to bounce back up. That is what is being reported. And the growth this time is it's really small, but it's good news.
Okay. Now,
because it has bottomed out, the only way to go now is up. What needs to be done is to assess what mix of economic initiatives and programs came about to bring it out of that recession.
Okay. Now, let us look at it from a very, perhaps a very layman's way of looking at it. Because when you say growth in GDP and all that, now what are the indices to show that there are growths in GDP and all that?
Okay. GDP is gross domestic product.
Okay.
Okay. That means all the services, all the production, all the goods and everything produced within a period, a financial period. Okay. In this case, they are taking every quarter. They are calculated every quarter, every 3 months. They do it nationally, they do it for the year, annually, but they do it every 3 months. Every 3 months calculation, we now give you the status of the economy of any entity you are looking at, whether it's a local government economy, a state government economy, or a national economy, or even the global economy. So that's the way you do it. And here now our focus is on the national economy. So, and the growth is 0.55%. That is even less than 1% growth. During the previous administration, we're experiencing some 8, 9, and 10% growth rates, which was quite high. But we understand the reasons why that was so. That was so because we had an economy that was buoyed up by good prices in oil products. Crude oil was selling for well in excess of $100 per barrel. And that is our mainstay as an economy. Now it's selling for just a little bit over $50 per barrel. So that difference is significant. And that impacted the state of the economy. But what we should be excited about and what we should commend this administration about are 3 initiatives that the administration has taken. And I think that these are even part of the reasons why we are beginning to see an improvement in the economy, okay, which is reflected by the growth, however insignificant, of the GDP. 1, the initiative to pay all debts to contractors. Over the past 20 years, contractors that executed jobs for the federal government over the past 20 years, the Ministry of Finance came up with an initiative to go ahead and begin to defray those debts.
Yeah.
And it comes to about 1.7 trillion naira. I'm not exactly sure about how much now. Right? I mean, I read that. That's a very good initiative, because that is going to reflate the economy. Okay? The second one, it's buying back the bonds issued, federal government bonds or treasury bonds issued on high interest rates, so that you can refinance your old debts with lower interest rates. So that's the second initiative. The third initiative, which touches you and I and the common man on the streets, is the 500 billion naira JIP program to assist small traders, petty traders, small-scale businesses.
Yeah.
Okay, so that too is going to reflate the economy, and it's going to spread the improvement, the funds around the economy, around to the nooks and crannies of the society.
Okay. Now, if you look at most headlines in the papers today, particularly this one that I have before me, it's from the Punch newspaper, and there's a bold headline that reads that Nigeria's exit from recession, that's that the gross domestic produce growth now weak, and of course depends on oil sector. Now, from your analysis earlier on, will I be right to say that it appears that when we say there's a growth in our GDP, it appears that the calculation is based on production in oil sector alone?
No. But we must understand that the impact, what we suffered as an economy.
But a while ago, you said that during the last administration, we had a growth even up to 0.8, 0.9%, and I think
not 0.8, 8%.
8%
and 9%.
And if I can remember, that was probably
yes,
when Nigeria has ever had it so good in oil production.
Exactly.
So it appears that most times when we say that there is increase in our GDP, it's just based on oil production alone.
Because oil represents a significant portion of our GDP. You know, about 30%. That is as per federal government. But it represents about 95%
of our production.
95% of our foreign exchange earning.
Okay.
You know, it's over 95%, as a matter of fact, of our foreign exchange earning. So that makes it all important to us, because that is what is responsible for what we can import and what we cannot import. If we are not selling oil, which represents 95 or more percent of our foreign exchange earnings, that means we are not going to be able to import anything. Okay. So that said, oil, the price of oil impacts our GDP quite significantly. And that is what the previous administration enjoyed. And it has nothing to do with the ability of the government or of any particular administration to influence or to do anything, to influence the prices. Mostly the oil prices are influenced by external forces, like we are seeing now. The tension between North Korea and the United States is going to drive up oil prices. The disaster in Houston, Texas is going to drive up oil prices, because for one, some 35, 36 refineries have shut down, and another 25 or so more.
In the U.S.?
In the U.S. They have about 376 or 326 refineries in the U.S.
300?
Yes. And they have not built a new refinery since 1976. So they built all those ones before 1976.
They've had
over 320 refineries in the United States. So they have some 25 that are operating under capacity, well under capacity, as a result of Hurricane Harvey. So with all of that, even that has already driven up the fuel prices in the U.S. by some 25 cents per gallon. So it's going to work to our favor, because they are going to have to import some oil.
Production has to step up.
So even without the production stepping up, the price is just going to go up, because since those refineries are not they are not producing, that means there's a shrinkage in supply already, and that will increase the price. Okay. Now, so we are going to benefit from that.
Okay. Now, what do you think is the implication? Because based on what we have here, that if we say that there is an exit from recession and that our GDP has increased, it means that is a weak GDP because that is what I have here. Because the growth in GDP now depends solely on oil production. So what is the implication of just heaping everything?
We have always known something we must come to grips with. We have always known that Nigeria it's a mono economy, a monoproduct reliant economy, which is oil and gas. Okay. But the agri sector is significant. There are other sectors too. The manufacturing sector, that is almost insignificant, as a matter of fact. But given our economy, we might see it as, given our kind of economy, we might see it as significant because we are a consumer nation, not a producer nation. What needs to be done, and the song that everybody has been singing for a long time, is to diversify the economy. In the initiative to assist small business and small scale entrepreneurs, what we are still going to see is the importation of consumer goods. That is not what we need. What we do need is the importation of producer goods, equipment, heavy duty equipment. So the middle income, or to build up the middle income group or sector, we need to increase our production capacity. And that will mean having another program to assist medium scale entrepreneurs.
Like what kind of programs are you talking about now?
Usually it's finance. Outside of finance, we can also be creative. One of the primary reasons why many factories, many producing enterprises, Dunlop, you name it, the textile industries, most of them moved away. Some even to Ghana, neighboring countries, and all of that. It's because of power supply. So what I believe we should engage, we should initiate, is to begin to develop zones, manufacturing zones. We usually we call them estates here, industrial estates. And to those industrial estates, you make sure that they have power, electric power 24/7. So if you have such zones where you give them preference to electric power supply, then they'll be able to produce at competitive rates. Because the reason factories will move away to other nations, however far they want to go, would be because they will not be able to produce, or they are not being able to produce at competitive rates with imported goods. So to be able to produce at competitive rates with imported goods, a major snag is power supply.
Okay.
And they are not going to be competing with residential users of power supply and hope to be able to, or depending on generators, and hope to be able to compete. So to be able to compete, you have to give them some kind of assistance. Another assistance commonly used, but mostly by industrial nations, would be tax buffers, tax breaks. Give them tax breaks until you fix the infrastructure deficiency that it's mitigating against their desire to produce locally.
Now, some analysts, trying to react to this exits from recession now, kind of praising and hailing some policies, some economic policies that this present administration has brought on board.
Which is what I've just done. I said we should commend the administration for those three initiatives, at least, yes.
So you have the opinion that some of these initiatives are largely responsible?
Exactly. They should extend the initiative. That's why I mentioned the power supply problem. It's a major infrastructure that needs to be addressed. We have been grappling with this for a long time, but while we are grappling with it on a national scale to benefit both residential users and industrial users, we have to give preference to industrial users under whatever kind of program we want to come up with. And that's why I suggest the zonal program, which is a designated program where you have zones, industrial zones, and then you are able to supply electricity to the industrial zones uninterrupted, so that they don't have to depend on alternative sources of.
Yeah, but I think that's already going on because if you take what is being alleged that the BEDC is doing now, you have some special lines to manufacturers. It's already on, so it's something that is already on probably.
They are doing it, but it's a new program. They are trying it. They have to still increase that.
Okay. Now let's look at it. To the ordinary man on the streets, when he hears that the economy that Nigeria as a nation has exited economic recession, then of course
let me take
how can we really
let me take an example that
explain this to the common man in concrete terms?
Okay,
because
okay, I explain how I can do that. Just take, for example, an employee who is married, wife and husband, okay?
And children too.
Children. The man and the woman both drawing income from their employment. One loses his job, or one loses his or her job. One of the spouses loses his or her job, okay? And then they have now to depend on this, on the income of one of the spouses. And then their expenses exceeds
the income.
So one of two things may happen. The income earner may have a bumper harvest, or may have an increase in salary that would take them over the expenses that they used to incur. Okay? So if that becomes the case, then they have bottomed out and they have gotten out of recession. So in losing one job, for both parents, in losing one job, they fell below the level where they can grow, because they are now spending more than they are able to bring in. So you are not growing, you are spending more. But you want to be in a situation where you are always growing, you are above board, you are making income, you are earning income that is above your expenses. So if you are not any income that is above your expenses, that means you are not growing.
So let's relate that. Let's situate it to the happenings in Nigeria now. Though you said it a while ago anyway, but does it really mean that because of the happening in US, just like what you said?
No, I just said those are two situations that could impact the oil prices. Okay, it's unfortunate that we have to use situations like that to,
To cite
to cite
examples or
examples of
instances,
because of the sufferings of the people there and the disaster that took place there.
Okay.
You know?
Now
But it's the reality of economics. That's what I'm trying to bring up.
Okay.
Is the reality of the economics of the situation. Because of those instances, we are going to experience increases in our oil prices.
Okay. Now, does it mean that the prices of food items, are going to go down? The prices of transport fares are going to go down. The prices of accommodation, rents and all that are going to go down. Because this is even the president this morning said it on one of
It might not actually be going down. What you might have is more affordability. Okay.
More affordability
Yes.
in terms of salaries being increased.
Exactly. In terms of the government being able to meet its salaries obligation. Because by the time you go into recession, it means that you also are cash strapped. And maybe you are not able to meet your salaries obligation. It's not just the federal government.
Even the state government
Because
too.
it permeates down to down to the private sector. The private sector suffers it, the government suffers it. We know here that our economy, it's heavily dependent on government, on government activities and actions. It's not so in the industrial nations. Okay? Yes, it's significant for industrial nations, but then the private sector thrives because they are producer nations. They do business, a whole lot of business within themselves and with other nations.
Okay, let's talk about the sustainability now of this exit from the recession that is measured by 0.55% by the growth of the GDP.
Thank you.
Now, how can we sustain this? Because an average Nigeria doesn't want to hear tomorrow that, we've gone back to recession again. So sustainability.
Let's break it down. Let's use our state as an example.
Okay.
Edo State. We see what has been going on since this administration came on board. The roads are being fixed. That's an infrastructure development. What impact does that have on production and productivity among the people? Come on now.
The roads that are being fixed now.
Hold on 1 second now. I used to, from my house to this place, used to take me an hour to an hour and a half. Okay? But because of the measures that the government has taken with the new traffic warning initiative and with the roads, I was able to get here under 45 minutes. That means I have saved 30 minutes. Yeah, I've saved 15 minutes. I said an hour to an hour 30 minutes.
Okay,
so
about
I've
30
saved
minutes.
15 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now multiply that by all the road users on the streets. Then you now see how much we have gained in time and man-hour production that we can now put to the application of for other productive ventures. So that's how it works. It all builds up. Okay, that's the impact. So that's the same thing the federal government has to do. You have to do it with infrastructures. You have to do it with infrastructure like roads. Take the Benin-Auchi road now. That's a road that used to take, it's an hour, 30 minutes drive. But now it takes about 3-4
hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what are we losing? Multiply that by all the users of that road and the loss of time that we suffer. So that reduces our productivity. So we need to be able to compute indirect impact assessments. Once you do that, then you can know how to prioritize your infrastructure development. Infrastructure. A whole lot of us we misunderstand what that means, because we call schools and hospitals and all of that infrastructure. Those are not, those are facilities, okay? The infrastructures, you're talking about the roads, electricity, telecommunications. Telecommunication is already in the hands of the private sector. We're talking of sewage system. We're talking about fire system, you know, fire control system, hydrants, fire hydrants, and all of that, water hydrants. Those are infrastructure. Those are things that we need to plan. But you cannot plan infrastructure to the neglect of facilities development. So we're doing everything at the same time. You have to. It's just like somebody who wants to become a doctor. You don't just study physics and wait until you complete physics before you start biology, and then you come to chemistry. You do all together. So everything must move together. It's like an engine. You have many moving parts. You must work on all the moving parts. All the moving parts have to be right.
Okay. Now, let us also look at the role of the SMEs, the small and medium scale, producers, manufacturers, and all that, because they are also they form an integral part of the economy. Now, now that we have exited the recession, now talking about sustainability, don't they have a role to play?
Look, the SMEs, you have to categorize them. What are the SMEs doing? Okay, what kind of businesses do they engage in? They engage mostly in buying and selling. And what are we buying and selling more than anything else? Imported goods from China and from other Asian countries.
Yeah, but some also.
Look, you are talking of commerce. You are talking of commerce. If we did not have oil at all, if we did not have a foreign exchange earner, a strong foreign exchange earner as we have in oil, what would have been is that we will not be able to import any of these things, because we will not have the foreign exchange with which to buy all these consumables that we are buying. So it's because we have that. And since we have that, why it is not a limitless product? Because it has a lifespan. However long it is, we are going to enjoy that. Okay? We have to know to set aside part of that revenue for productive ventures. So that, and when I mean productive ventures, I mean production ventures actually. That is heavier industries. You move from basic technology to intermediate technology to advanced technology, and then now to smart technology. Okay, so you can categorize it into those four areas. Where are we operating in the main as a nation, as an economy? We are operating more on the basic technology level. What we need to do is to step it up, and to be able to step it up, we need to begin to focus. We have been talking about it, but a lot of people just see the IT section as perhaps the only section to look at. No, there are a lot of other factors that you must bring to bear, especially like our highways. You just need to fix our highways, and you need to expand them. Okay, our highways, because 20, 30 years ago, the population was not as robust as we have today. Consumption was not as robust. So the traffic on our highways today, it's much heavier, much higher than it used to be. So you must also expand along with your increase in traffic, and you must also solidify that, strengthen your infrastructure, your highway infrastructure accordingly.
All right, as we wrap this up now, I don't know, I can ask if the consumer, the average consumer on the street has a role to play in all of this. Because sustainability is the key word. Nigerians for the past few months have always been going with the fear of economic recession. So now that the National Bureau of Statistics has told us that Nigeria has exited recession now. So we have talked about the role of the government. We have talked about the role of SMEs. The consumer, do they have a role to play too?
The consumer always has a role to play.
The consumer always have a role to play. So
exactly.
what are the roles?
The consumer needs to be prudent in his consumption.
Okay.
Okay. He needs to be prudent in his consumption in that he needs to, be a smart consumer. He needs to prioritize his consumption properly.
Yeah.
He needs to be proactive. He needs to save some money aside, not just for the raining day. Save the money aside, save some money aside to be applied to production ventures. Okay? Not just consumer ventures. We engage a lot in unnecessary consumer ventures.
I'm just wondering.
Especially, especially our social functions.
Yeah.
Our social functions do not need to be sometimes as lavish or as loud as they are.
Okay.
Okay.
Like birthdays,
now you take a typical American investor. Okay. He doesn't have to have a home in 4, 5, 6 cities. He has a home in his home state, one. And if he does go to any of those other cities, he stays in the hotels. So because he has not invested money in several homes in several places, he now has money enough to start different businesses that will employ people.
Yeah, but you just said invest.
Yes.
If, take for example,
if you are a consumer, yes.
If as a consumer,
right.
if I invest now,
if you save some money aside.
Yeah, for investment.
Yes. Exactly.
So is it not?
So you open a small provision store, and the provision store employs 2 people while you are employed.
Building of homes can also be a form of investment.
Of course.
Yeah. So
when you are saying building of homes,
yeah,
it depends on how.
Building of houses.
No, it depends on what you are going to use it for. If you build 3, 4, I said homes. If you build 3, 4, 5 homes that you stay in, you don't call that investment.
No, but I can't stay.
No, because if I build a home that I want to live in, okay, yes, it's an investment to the extent that, okay, you own a home, all right? If you are using more space than you need, then you are not being efficient in the use of that property that you have. Okay. Whereas, if the next investor, who is just as endowed as you are, who is just as opportune as you are, takes that same investment, builds exactly what he needs, and takes the rest and builds a tenancy property, a rentable property.
Invest
that's investment that will bring income in, more income. So that's what I'm saying about being
and even
prudent.
The number of cars that we have too.
Yes,
I think we also need to talk to government officials. Going with retinue of convoys. And
the big problem, I must say this, is a lot of people do not, and I say this without apologies and without reservation, do not understand the meaning of effective consumption and efficient consumption.
What is effective and efficient consumption?
That something is possible to be done does not make it expedient to be done. That's just it.
Okay.
Yes, you can, like we have lighting in this studio, for example. Okay, we can have a whole lot more lighting to this place, but does it increase significantly the resolution that you want to achieve?
It impacts on the quality of.
Does it increase significantly? That's what I'm saying. So you want to be at that level where you have just enough to achieve the purpose and not have excess. Where you have excesses, that is where you go into inefficiency. And that is what is happening with federal government and our governments. There are a lot of excesses, just like you have said. Okay, now, we see a number of governors, thank God for the governor we have right now, that go out with long convoys of vehicles. Okay? There's a lot of excesses involved in such travel.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a small convoy that still accomplishes exactly the same thing you were doing with the long convoy, you have cut down on the excesses.
Now, Mr. Fred, we agree. I remember when this recession started, we were always told that we should tighten our bets and all that. So now that we are told that we've exited the recession, are we going to go? I'm just trying to think aloud here because it's probably the thoughts of the average Nigerian.
Listen now, you did mention something about sustainability.
Yeah.
How do you sustain this? Now the growth is almost infinitesimal.
Yeah,
it's so small, so insignificant. That it's not time to loosen the belt yet. Yes, okay?
Okay.
You want to be sure that this growth is real. Because right now, it's like, is this really real? 0.055, it's small. Very, very small. But what we want will be, something like when China was actually growing. China was growing at 14-15%.
Their GDP.
Their GDP. What happened in the case of China is that they woke up to their numerical strength as a people. The quality of your workforce, when you send children to school, what are you doing? The first thing what parents are thinking about, what the ordinary parent is thinking about, I'm helping my child to become a responsible citizen, to be self-sustaining. When he grows up, he gets a job and all of that. But from the standpoint of the government has to have a wider view of that. You are building up a future workforce. You are increasing the quality of your workforce. And the quality of your workforce is going to be a major determinant of your productive capacity in the future. So the higher and the better your schools are, the higher and the better your hospitals are, to make sure you have a healthy workforce, you have a high quality workforce, well-educated workforce, well-trained workforce, the better your workforce is going to be. And the more robust your economy is going to be, and the more assured your prosperity can be guaranteed.
So obviously everybody has a role to play.
Everybody has a role to play. It's not time to tighten up, to loosen up the belts yet. We need to save some money. We need to keep working. We need to add a couple of hours. Yes, we need to add a couple of hours to what we used to do. If we used to work for like 8 hours, and then we find other things we can do,
so
for additional, yes, exactly, 2-3 more hours. We need to make more sacrifices. You used to sleep for 7 hours a day. You cut it down to 6.
Okay.
So that 1 hour, when you now calculate that on the entire policy, 200 million people applying 1 extra hour every day to productive venture, you see that.
All right, Mr. Fred Uyigwe, thank you so much. You've been able to really bring it down the way we will really understand and just follow up. Now, I got something from what he said, that if we really need to sustain this exit, that we've exited from the recession, that everybody has a role to play. The government has a role to play by providing basic amenities, most especially, social amenities, things like roads, power for manufacturers, and also so that the economy can be further diversified. The idea of just placing everything on oil alone is really not good. That is the role that the government has to play. Then also for the manufacturers also have to think outside the box. They have to know that, okay, now that the economy has exited recession, most especially for the small and medium scale enterprises, the manufacturers, they need to do much more so that will sustain this exit that we've exited from the recession. And also for the consumers, that is you and I, will have a role to play. I think that was a point whereby Mr. Fred Uyigwe was where he said that it's not time to loosen the bet yet. We still have to keep it tight there. But that is not going to be for too long because Nigerians can not be patient enough to for that. So that you just see that we sustain, this recession that we've exited from, so that it will be a thing of the past. Because for the past few months, it's been one thing that we really don't want to think about. When you hear an average Nigerian talks, he says that, don't you know that there's economic recession and all that is something that has really bothered us. Well, a very big thank you, Mr. Fred Uyigwe.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we'll take a short pause now for other segments to come your way. And remember the program is still this morning on ITV. Stay tuned.